Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Distant Tourist Podcast. My name is Robert.
And I'm Thomas.
And in this podcast, we of course look at one of Japan's 47 prefectures each week. And Thomas, I know you've been pretty excited for this episode, so do you want to give us kind of a quick introduction of where we're going?
Sure. So this one is going to be Nara.
Mm-hmm.
Nara was the first stationary capital of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in early Japanese history, whenever an emperor would die, the capital would be moved.
Okay.
This was to kind of ward off evil spirits, because it was seen as if a emperor dies, then evil spirits kick in.
Okay.
So this kind of brought in something, I guess, it was different because they weren't moving around. So this was the first actual city that could be developed.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Because before it would be like, all right, this is the new capital. And then they start building. And then the emperor would die. And they go, okay, let's move it to another area.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, and they just kept doing that where it'd be like, move it. Things would start building up. And then an emperor would die. And then they'd move again. They moved, I believe, like 10 different times before this, or multiple different times. And then finally, when they came across Nara, they're like, hey, let's not move it this time. So they decided to stay put, which led into a lot of other things. Probably the most significant was Buddhism.
Okay.
Because at the time where Nara was founded as its capital, Buddhism really took off. It was really pretty much enforced Buddhism. Like, there is the History of Japan video where the emperor is like, oh, here's this cool new thing, Buddhism. You guys should try it. And then everyone kind of says no. And then he says, try it. And everyone says no a little bit quieter. And then he just puts it into the thing. It pretty much happened like that. That movie, that video is so perfectly accurate. So
was it like they were staunch against it the first time, and the second time they weren't as aggressively against Buddhism?
So what really happened was he pretty much said, if I win, there's a war that happened. And he said that if this war succeeded, I will make Buddhism the biggest religion in Japan.
Okay.
And so they went, and he won. And so, true to his word, he made Buddhism the new big thing.
Okay, and that's how it came to be such a big part of Japanese history.
Yes. Also, Buddhism, like Chinese, or even where it's originally from, which is India, Buddhism has changed from each place it goes to, it changes. So Indian Buddhism is different than Chinese Buddhism, and that those two are different than Japanese Buddhism. When we go into more Japanese Buddhism, we're focused more on like a Western paradise, where you could just say a phrase and then you'd achieve enlightenment. If you said a phrase with enough, I don't know if it would be vigor or with enough.
Maybe?
Yes, exactly. It'd be with enough conviction, you can just skip past everything and achieve enlightenment.
So if I literally just said, I have achieved enlightenment with enough conviction, I would have attained enlightenment?
It was mostly used by warriors because at the time there's a lot of wars happening. So it'd be literally like, oh, I'm about to die. And then you would literally just say it. It's only like one line. It's like 10 words that you would say. And then you would die. So you would have plenty of time to, like, if you know that you're dying, you can just say the phrase in hopes that you can achieve it.
I have said the 10 magic words, and thus I can ascend.
Pretty much. But anyway, that's another thing. I know that we are definitely thinking about maybe doing a isms of Japan, where we talk about maybe Buddhism and Shintoism and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that could be a whole different discussion in and of itself.
When touching on kind of the religions of even Asia as a whole, it just is just so much, and it's so interesting, but it's just so much we can't cover all of it. So yeah, if you guys are interested in that, let us know.
Yes, here's our litmus test.
Right. But other than that, what did you find, Robert, in Nara?
Yeah, so I wanted to start off this time because I know that you definitely had a large chunk you wanted to talk about. But I think that like something that for those that might not be, not necessarily not interested in the history, but more as in like wanting to get a bigger breadth of Japan, might want to go to Yoshinoyama, which is basically this large mountain that's just covered in cherry blossom trees. I mean, like if you see pictures, it's just coats the landscape almost like as if someone took a paintbrush and just said, "Be pink now." Well, of course, when you go and they bloom, of course.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that they usually bloom from March to April, but there's like
So right now.
yeah, like right now, I don't. I'm pretty sure you can go view it. It's not too hard to get there, as I understand. And so apparently, the blooming is separated into 4 different sections. So like every 2 weeks, one of them blooms. So it's like,
It's like a gradual thing.
yeah,
And so it's not just like, here's everything all at once,
yeah, no,
and then we take everything away all at once.
yeah, it's not just like here's my 2 weeks. All right, come back next year. It's like, oh, you got a month. So it's like, oh, if you missed the first couple weeks, there's a section that's got them, and then there you go. You can of course take a bus up the mountain. Appropriately, there's a town called or known as Yoshino, along the route. So it's easy to like set up for picnics, stuff like that. And I think it'd just be kind of an interesting trek to just kind of see, like, maybe if you time it correctly, just see the gradual shift in the cherry blossom trees as you're getting up there. Apparently, it was even designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site,
Oh.
known as the Sacred Sites and Pilgrimage Routes in the Key Mountain Range.
Oh.
So there's, as you might imagine, there's definitely something worth experiencing there. For I think everybody, just to see everything that's going on.
It'd be perfect for probably the flower viewing, cherry blossom viewing festival, which even in itself, it's kind of like a festival. It's mostly a picnic. Usually what a lot of Japanese people do during the cherry blossom season is a lot of picnics where they just pack up and sit underneath the cherry blossoms and have a picnic. That is something that a lot of people do during the times of when cherry blossoms bloom. There's even special like blankets you can get, stuff like that. It's not really a blanket. It's more almost like a towel. It's like their own special thing that they have for it. But yeah, essentially you just have a picnic with friends underneath cherry blossoms, and that's kind of what Japanese people do during the cherry blossom festival or season.
And I think like as you kind of see, like there's just such a ability to, because you can take a route and you can come across some different temples, some different like perfect settings. Just place down your towel or picnic blanket, whichever, to just settle down and then just kind of enjoy the view or enjoy the festival. I will say though, because I had to make sure I had this number correctly before I said it. Apparently, they have about 30,000 cherry trees covering the mountain. So
Whoa.
yeah, I believe apparently there are different varieties, but apparently the Yamazakura type are the ones that are the most common to see. So I'm not, again, as I've kind of like reiterated a couple episodes, I'm not a botanist, but it's something I'm definitely curious to see if me with the untrained eye will notice a difference.
Probably. There might be I think there's probably like a slight color difference. But again, I also am not a botanist, so yes.
Yeah, so that was definitely one that I was interested to see. Also to see, I guess the most concentrated cherry blossom viewing I could get my eyes on, I guess you could say.
Yes.
But moving onwards, I also decided to pick something, I guess, a little more remote.
Cherry blossoms aren't remote enough.
I mean, from like what some of the other episodes we've done, it seems like it's very easy to find if you go to the right places. Um, but I wanted to actually switch gears to the village of Tenkawa, which literally translates to River of Heaven.
Oh,
And so it's a very isolated village. It is apparently, according to some of the articles I've read, considered like a nexus of spiritual power. To what degree, I don't quite understand.
interesting.
It wasn't very well defined in some of the articles that I've read. But what's interesting is that it is how should I say, it is there. The village is kind of a typical practitioner of Shugendo, which is, to simplify, kind of like mixing different beliefs from Buddhism, I believe Shintoism, and even I believe Taoism,
Oh,
into kind of a very unique. It's very much a belief that focuses on self-discipline, strict diets, almost in a way, sort of following Stoicism, in the sense that like controlling yourself and only keeping what's necessary, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, it's interesting because like it's only got buses that arrive there, I think, 3 times a day,
okay.
and it's like a 1 hour trip, like on by bus to get there. So it's fairly isolated. And at first I thought, oh well, that's cool. I'll go get to see. I guess this place's spiritual power. And then notice my surprise when I find out they even do performances, and I wouldn't say they keep current, but they even had they did like a version of a John Elton song, like as a performance, which I confused me when I heard spiritual power, because I don't know about you, but when I think spiritual, I think usually more how do I want to phrase that? Ancient, kind of well defined, concrete, kind of like a set of beliefs, but like to find out that they kind of choose to also accept some newer influences as well, and also kind of take it as a point to just improve and also integrate.
Well, yes, because that's also, well, Japanese people do that for a lot of things. It is very much, it's interesting because if you ask a Japanese person if they are religious, they will say no. However, if you ask them like, oh, do you go to temples like every so often, or do you have talismans or blessed talismans? Do you use those? And the answer is going to be yes for those. And there's many things that, if you're in some place like America, the States, they say that that obviously is religious. But if you ask a Japanese person, it's not religious at all. It's just something that they do, and they very much take aspects of other religions and adapt it to their own. In fact, Christianity isn't big there, really. That, not saying that there isn't, Christianity in Japan currently, but
the last time I saw a statistic, it was like 1.6%. Don't take that as word of mouth.
It's very small. That's because there was a regime that cracked down and made sure that Christianity didn't enter into Japan. But also, Christianity is very much, there is only one God. And for Japanese people, they believe in Shintoism, and they believe in a lot of different things. There are kind of multiple little mini gods, and there's multiple different things that they can believe in. And that's what was another hard thing of why it didn't really get that popular, was because it didn't have time for them to adapt and change it. But also, it is very much of, this is one God. You can't have any other religion. It's either you are this or you're not.
Yeah.
And yeah, so so they ended up saying, no, thank you.
No, thank you. We can take it elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, to close out the point, apparently you can also climb the local mountain, Mount Omine. And I guess it's kind of like a way to challenge yourself both physically and spiritually. Although to what extent I mean, obviously imagine the hike physically, but in the spiritual sense, I'm not quite sure. Though, in a strange caveat, the practice or the climate is like limited to men.
Oh,
Which I found surprising considering, like mentioning that the fact they from Elton John stuff, it was there's still that mix of tradition in this place, if that makes sense. Um, like they still hold fast to certain ones.
so you can't go up there if you are.
As far as I kind of tried to look into it, and I didn't find any exceptions. I'm pretty sure there might be one or two that I just didn't find, but typically only men are allowed to go in, according to the articles I found at the time.
That's not very modern.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on a lighter note, they do have their own onsen there. So, I mean, like, if you don't feel like climbing mountains, I guess you can just go hang out in onsen. But
Onsens are nice, I have to say.
yeah, it's definitely an experience I'm looking forward to. But yeah, I just found that interesting because it seemed like such a, like you mentioned before about the mixture of old and new. I just found it such a strange mixture, especially for such a town that is almost intentionally isolated. And so I felt like that was just something to bring up to just like for me, it's like a sense of to go experience a culture that's so vastly different than my own. Like Japan already is, but to see such a, I guess even more extreme or different variety just kind of fascinated me. But yeah, for now, those are the big points that I wanted to cover. I know that you had definitely a lot that you wanted to cover right now.
My big thing is Todaiji Temple. Todaiji Temple is probably the most important thing of Nara. It is the most well-known and famous thing that is in Nara. Yes. The Todaiji Temple was first constructed in 752.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's very old, and until recently, it was the world's largest wooden structure.
Oh.
So this place, it has a lot of history into it. This was the first, since Buddhism was really implemented during that time when they finally consolidated into Nara. They had this Todaiji Temple built, which is a massive wooden structure, and it has one of the biggest statues of Buddha in the world.
That seems very appropriate considering the history.
It is a massive bronze statue. And to put it kind of somewhat into perspective, just the hand opened like facing out is about the size of an average American, about in feet. I believe it's like 6 feet.
Oh my!
Tall. Just the hand.
Yeah, just the hand.
So that's why this is one of the most interesting things, is because this was really built in about 800. Like for the actual Buddha statue. It is pure bronze. And so one of the most interesting things about it is how could they build something so big and massive out of bronze in that time period?
I'm more impressed that it wasn't completely destroyed at some point.
It was twice.
There it is. There's the catch.
This temple has been burnt down many times, because for us, in modern terms of a monk, it is someone who does not participate in any kind of violence or any malice.
So pacifism is a key.
Usually when you think about monks, you think about something like that, where it's like they're very much always meditating and they're doing all this other stuff. Well, monks in older Japan history, they were monk warriors.
That sounds pretty metal, no pun intended.
And actually, the reason why one of the things were burnt down was because of people were worried about these monk warriors being too strong.
Oh, that's actually pretty impressive. I mean, not that they burned it down, but the fact that the monks were that, I guess, feared or well regarded, I guess.
It was mostly documented in the Tales of Heike.
Oh.
Which, if you have not read, I would highly recommend. The Tales of Heike is about a story about the loser of a war.
Oh.
Yes, which is interesting in itself. Usually there's a war and then history writes about the winner.
Yeah, that's where they get the saying history is written by the victors. So.
Yeah. But this time, this was after the Tokugawa shogunate took over, Tales of Heike was written. And it was written about the, I believe it was the Taisen. I'm not entirely sure what their name was before it, but it was about them. And the reason why was because even though the capital had still been moved to Tokyo by the shogunate, a lot of the culture and everything like that was still in Kyoto. And a lot of supporters were still in Kyoto, and they wrote the book. But it's an absolutely amazing book, and it starts off with the old, pretty much it said that the old government lost because it had burnt down the temple.
Oh, so I guess in a way
as a bad omen.
Oh, okay.
This is what happened. And then also at some point of the book, there's monk warriors that enter the fight.
Oh, okay.
And actually, it's really interesting because the way they decided which side to pick was through a chicken.
What?
So they had a chicken, and you know when you cut off a chicken's head, they still run around?
Yeah.
Well, they said pretty much, okay, here's this chicken. If I plop it down after I cut its head off, and whichever direction it runs to, that's the thing I will join into. That's the side I'll join.
So it's a very complex game of coin flip, in a way.
Kind of, yeah. And so, yeah, that's how they decided which force to join and back.
I mean, I guess that's a decisive way.
Yes. So, but yeah, that's going a lot into that book, which is absolutely fascinating. There's even a female samurai that is in there. Yes, it is a very amazing and interesting book. But going back to the Todaiji Temple, there is also a little hole, or there's a pillar. There's a massive pillar.
Okay.
And there is a hole in this pillar, or tunnel, that is about the size of the Buddha's nostril. They use that as a reference for some reason.
Okay.
It's still relatively small, but it said if you can crawl through it, you will achieve enlightenment in your next life.
Through this pillar.
Yeah, if you can fit through this pillar, you will achieve enlightenment in your next life.
Do you know how wide the pillar is?
I do not believe we could fit through it.
Not with that attitude.
I mean, maybe some people can, but it still is relatively small. A lot of parents have their children go through it at a younger age, so they can go through it easily.
Just get yourself some suction cups, stick your hands forward, and just pull yourself in. That's me cheating, but you know.
But yeah, if you can fit all the way through, you will apparently achieve enlightenment in your next life.
Look, man, you got to play that long game. Like, even I'm starting to consider it.
But also, this is a absolutely massive building.
Yeah.
That is just absolutely amazing. There's other statues of Buddha, but the main attraction is the massive bronze statue of Buddha.
So that there are other buildings with Buddhas in them.
There are other holes. The one that has Buddha is the Dai Butsuden, which is big Buddha hole, essentially.
Very literal, but yeah, I'll take it.
And then there are other, there are still other areas.
Yeah.
In this giant temple. There's another secondary hall, which is actually where they hold the a festival that I'll get to in just a second.
Okay.
But there's also the gates are another huge staple about it. It is absolutely massive at the gates, and there is two Bodhisattva which
Yeah.
I will, if we do the religion video, I will definitely go into detail about those. But essentially, it means Buddha to be.
Oh, okay.
And they are meant to kind of ward away evil as you enter in, or actually scare away any evil. So it's kind of said that if you are a evil person, if you look upon these statues and you feel extremely scared, and you like go away, that's you're an evil person.
You're a bad guy.
Yeah, it's pretty much just to ward off evil.
That sounds actually pretty safe.
I mean, it didn't stop it from the place burning down multiple times.
Fair enough.
Plus, the thing is completely made out of wood. So even by chance, lightning strikes it, it would go up in flames. And that happened another time. So yes, there's also another thing I wanted to touch on is there's a thing called pagodas. And those are the ones that you see the layered tower that goes up with like an antenna on the top.
Yeah.
These are locations that hold, relics of Buddha.
Oh, okay. Like, as in, like, do they keep it on the top of the tower? Or were you talking, like, at the base, it's just kind of
Underneath at the base, like usually underneath the base, there is a relic of Buddha. Usually sometimes the famous one in another prefecture that has apparently some hair from Buddha himself.
Oh.
A lot of these are supposed to have actual Buddha relics, which is usually like a bone of Buddha. There are many things that are like, there's a lot of things that are pretty much like, oh, this is supposed to be this part of Buddha or this part of what happened. And then they have a tiered tower with an antenna, which isn't really an antenna. It's supposed to be kind of like a thing of ascension.
Okay.
Well, the only negative thing about these pagodas, even though being absolutely stunning, is they are essentially a really big antenna.
Yeah, I was gonna say it seems like just a beacon to say "rob me."
So, not that. No one robbed it.
Wow, that's impressive.
Well, the building is made out of stone, pretty much concrete on the bottom.
Okay.
That cases the relic.
Okay.
And then it is a wooden structure that goes up with a metallic antenna on the top.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Now I'm seeing the utility here.
So, because the top is a metallic, it attracts lightning.
They often got struck.
And so, during these buildings of pagodas, many of them burned down because
they turned into lightning rods.
They were essentially lightning rods. And it is a miracle that some of the pagodas that are still standing today are still standing today.
They keep those metal rods in them?
Oh yeah, it's at the very top.
Oh man.
You can't, that's the whole thing, is it's, it'd be literally tearing down a pagoda to try to kind of save it.
Yeah.
Which raises a bunch of issues as well. But there was a massive pagoda that was going to be built. I think they did build it. However, it burnt down because the antenna was just so large. The antenna, I think, was like 16 feet long, like tall, or I think it was a little bit taller than that. I'm not entirely sure about the height, but it was extremely tall. And this pagoda was going to be extremely huge and tall. And then,
Yeah, and then it backfired horribly.
Yes. So a lot of pagodas in Japanese history burnt down because they were essentially lightning rods. And there are some pagodas that are still up, and I would highly recommend those pagodas because those are just, it's amazing to see them. And also there's some when I say antenna, it's not like a modern antenna. There still is engravings of the Buddha's life on it.
Oh,
so there still is details on the top.
So the rod itself has engravings of Buddha.
Yeah, the rod itself is very much intricate and very ornate.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
So yes, I wanted to touch on those pagodas because it was just they are amazing and interesting, especially if you are an architect. They made the center a circle, a cylinder, and built out from there, which is extremely interesting. Plus, it was all made out of wood, like the main part, except for the base and the tip. Moving on from there, there is the Omizu Tori, which is a ritual that I talked about earlier that is held in the, not the big Buddha like temple, but it is a secondary temple close by. Well, this is extremely interesting because what they do is they have torches. And they burn a bunch of torches for the ceremony.
Okay.
Well, the only issue with that is the structures are made out of wood.
Right, which screams flammable.
Yes. So you would have to be careful carrying it up. But what the whole purpose is to this also sounds kind of harsh, is to coat people, the crowd, in the embers of these torches.
Oh my god. For what purpose? Because it sounds incredibly dangerous the longer this goes on.
To give them a safe rest of the year.
Is this what they call an oxymoron?
Kind of. The ceremony is held at the beginning of March, from March 1st to the 14th. And each night, they burn about 10 torches. Except for the last night, they burn 20 torches.
So it's the extra flammable then.
Yes, and they are pretty much on top of the building doing this ceremony.
Okay.
They have to be extremely careful. But I believe there has been times where it has been caught on fire.
Gee, how surprising.
Yes, I would be surprised if it had not. Because you are just carrying big torches onto a very flammable building. Because these buildings are completely made out of wood. So a small spark, and this is also old wood, usually.
So it's pretty dry.
Very, very dry, very flammable. And, one ember could set the whole thing up.
I'm going to assume that there are safeguards for this that I'm just not aware of.
To my knowledge, not really.
Oh no.
There's the crowd, which has to take a relatively far distance away. Not really, because they still have to be able to get hit by the embers from the torches. And then there's the people that are burning them on top of the thing.
My big thing, I used to have long hair, but it's like, what, is my hair just gonna catch on fire if I get hit in the wrong spot? Or...
I've apparently heard that has happened to some people. Is that, it is, embers and ashes that are raining onto you.
To be fair, if you do get those embers on you and you don't catch on fire, I think you do kind of deserve the blessing that it entails, I guess.
And then also, it's mostly done at night as well, because it's a fire.
Yeah, you want it to stand out.
So yeah, it's gonna be done at night.
Okay.
That is the other thing. When it hits about sunset-ish, that's when crowds gather.
Okay.
I don't know if they did it this year just because of COVID, but
I'm gonna guess not.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess not. However, they've been doing a little bit better in Japan than here in the United States. So.
Okay.
So they could have gone with it. I know that, a lot of religious rituals here in the States are still going, even though there are still things.
Yeah.
But other than that, this is also the Todaiji Temple I also want to mention, is whenever you see those pictures or videos of deer bowing, that's going to be here at this, not here exactly at the temple, but the Nara Park. That's where it has all of the deer. I would have to say, if you do decide to want to feed the animals, the deer, be extremely careful, because they are very aggressive. If they know that you have food that they want, they are
gonna attack you.
They are very much a go-getter. Yes.
This just got riskier.
And if you are gonna give the deer food, you don't want to like taunt it too much because it's just gonna go for the food.
Yeah.
So that's my only words of advice. You can still feed the animals, however, just be careful. Yeah. They are still animals. So yeah, that's my biggest word of advice is I've heard many stories of people's like purses getting like bitten and eaten because of the deer. Think that there's something in it, or some deers have gone into like people's pockets, like literally like reached in and tried to like eat whatever's in their pocket because they think they have food there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just saying, be very careful in that area. Also, Nara Park. When I was doing research, and I think you found this as well, when we were doing research on Nara, the biggest thing was Nara Park.
Yeah, it seemed to act as more like the hub for a lot of different structures, including the Todaiji Temple. I also found some structures based on Shintoism. I didn't want to delve too far into it in this episode, only because I didn't feel confident enough to start discussing Shintoism. And I know that it's more of your field of expertise, but one thing I had picked up on just as a general overview is that it seems like Nara Park, like I mentioned earlier, is just kind of the hub or the center for a lot of this, seemingly.
Kind of. There's a lot of temples and gardens and stuff that are just spread across this park. And even doing a lot of research, people are just like, yeah, you want to just go to Nara Park. And a lot of people spend like a day at Nara Park.
Yeah.
Where they go, okay, there's Todaiji, and then they go to the next temple, and then the next temple. A lot of people from Osaka and Kyoto visit Nara just because it's kind of like in between them. It's off the path just a little bit, but it still is really close to them.
Yeah.
Plus, it's like full of history. It's been around since the 700s.
Yeah.
So just kind of that in general, that amount of history that goes into it, it makes it a spot for people that are really interested in older culture. Also, if you are Buddhist or Shintoist, I think that is the proper word. That's kind of where you want to go and to pay respects. My last place that I was going to mention is also still kind of in the park. It is the Isuen Garden.
Okay.
So this garden is just another extremely gorgeous garden. It's broken up into two parts. There's a front and a back.
Okay.
In the back, you can see the top of the Todaiji Temple, along with kind of the mountains in the background. And both front and back are revolving around a pond, or two different ponds.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stepping stones and little mini like bridges and stuff like that. So it is very much a continuous kind of walk that is absolutely amazing.
So there's kind of like a pathway, or is it kind of like spread out?
It's a pathway.
Okay.
There are I believe there's two tea houses.
Oh.
So if you wanted to stop and have tea by the pond and looking out, you can do that. And then there is also, what I found interesting is the people that kind of own the area, they put in a museum there too. A museum for ancient Chinese and Korean artifacts.
Oh.
Yes. They put in a little museum right there, which is really nice because it also has a lot of, from what I saw of the museum, a lot of art, a lot of the kind of the Chinese Tang Dynasty art in there, which another thing that I personally absolutely love is Tang Dynasty paintings. But yeah, that's definitely where I'd want to kind of end it. and my kind of trip is going to somewhere like that, because also not only are you experiencing a lot of Japanese stuff, but then you could also learn more about Chinese and Korean culture based off of just going to this one place.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a lot of opportunity to get invest in a lot of things.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I actually had a wild card that I wanted to bring up since we were kind of talking about Nara Park.
Yeah.
So this is less of a location. Well, it is, but like it's more the festival I want to discuss. So, on the east side of Nara Park, on like a hillside, they call it Mount Kusayama. I have to always read that out. It's so hard.
Okay.
So apparently on the fourth Saturday of January of every year, they set that mountain on fire.
Oh.
Yeah, they just set that thing on fire and they call it Wakakusa Yamayaki. And so the origins are kind of vague on this one. It seems like not really anybody knows how. Some people say it was because of a boundary dispute. Some people say it's like a beginning of the year kind of event, like brings in spring kind of thing.
By burning everything.
Apparently,
Welcome spring. Let's burn this entire hill.
Yeah, let's burn this sucker to the ground. Yeah, so there's not a definitive origin that I could find, but like when I said, oh, it's like a hillside, it's just gonna be like some small, like, little fire, because they started off with a fireworks display first. Excuse me, and then I see a picture of the whole thing. No, they got like a full like hillside, like a large amount, like it looks like the whole hill's gonna start spreading to the surrounding area. Of course, it's not; it's controlled, but like
it's still scary. If someone messes up, like it's gonna keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Apparently, you can see it from just about anywhere in Nara.
I would imagine. Yes.
And one of the other pictures I found was, I think at least the pagoda, looking lit up like it's about to catch on fire. Of course, it's not, but it's just like the picture is just kind of crazy. I just kind of want to go to see how you celebrate an event by almost setting the whole city on fire. It sounds fun. I mean, apparently it's fairly popular for the locals, as you might imagine, arson might be.
Yes.
I don't want to trivialize it too much, but yeah, I didn't know how to properly integrate that into a trip per se. It would definitely be the kind of thing where it's like, oh,
if you were there at the time, you would see it.
Yeah, like, I mean, of course they've got like a full, they got food stands, the whole thing. It's very much a festival, but it's just the fact that like the main event, like, usually be just fireworks. No, we're gonna set the hill on fire. Just like, I kind of gotta see, because like that like suppressed arsonist in myself is just like, but how? But yeah, that's just kind of my surprised random pick that I just wanted to go experience for myself.
I'd also imagine about the trees being how the environment would be, just because I know a lot of people would also used to, and I think they still do, burn a lot of kind of crops and stuff like that. To burning things clears like the path for new stuff to grow. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it, of kind of like you're burning a section to bring forth something new, or like, if that has like a metaphorical thing for yourself as well. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. But also setting a whole hill on fire, why not?
Why not? Burn, baby, burn. But yeah, that was my wild card pick. Did you have any that you wanted to bring up, or?
No, that was it with the garden. I definitely want to go there, and I definitely want to sit there and spend some time at the Nara Park. The only thing I'd be concerned about is the deer. There's things that you can, like at the entrances, there are a bunch of sellers that sell deer-friendly food for you to feed the deer. But I don't know if that would be for me, just because I'd be worried that they think I have even more food.
And then next thing you got a hole in your backpack.
Yeah, or something like that. It's just or they want some, they keep demanding more. But I think it would be pretty cool to kind of relax underneath a cherry blossom tree and just kind of having like deer kind of chilling out next to you, you know. I think that would be very cool. But yeah, like I said, I'd be concerned about them eating something.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I would definitely enjoy going more of the temples and stuff if I did the research beforehand, and that way I was just like, I could understand more of the significance, because like the reason I didn't really pick anything too seriously in the temples was that I didn't feel confident about commenting specifically on their importance, and I didn't want to undercut it from someone who didn't fully understand, if that makes sense. But it's definitely something I'd like to investigate further.
Yeah, so I think there we would like to thank you guys for watching or listening as well. If you did want to kind of have us make a kind of like a religious one about the isms like Buddhism, Shintoism, let us know. I definitely feel like it'd be extremely fun to talk about it. That's something I find very interesting. Talking about it is it's just a lot of fun. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. If you wanted to look us up on Instagram, it is distant_tourist. If you wanted to follow us there, we always post up a picture and a brief description of the episode of the week that we do. And that's pretty much an easy way of knowing exactly when we are releasing each episode. Also, if you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and maybe hit the subscribe button. That'd be cool. You don't have to if you don't want to. But yes, thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Thank you.
See ya.